Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Mandy. So before we start to talk about anything, just to let you know, this video is gonna be a pretty long one because I'm gonna talk about my experience of learning Chinese as a native Chinese. So that means I'm going to talk about my 12 years of experience of learning Chinese. 12 years. So that's gonna take a while. So first of all, why am I making this video? So being a native Chinese and a Chinese language teacher who teach Chinese to foreigners, sometimes I got asked by my students or my foreigner friends, they would ask me that, how did you native Chinese learn Chinese? Is there any different from how we learn Chinese? That's a very big question. To be honest, the way that Chinese learn Chinese and foreigner learn Chinese, they are two different systems. For example, as a native Chinese, the very first lesson we learned in Chinese courses, that would be Hanzi instead of Pinyin. And we started to learn about poems in a very early age, let's say the first grade in primary school when we are only 7 years old. So as for foreigners, the very first lesson you would learn, that must be Pinyin, and you would not need to learn poem unless you are very interested in Chinese ancient literature or you're gonna pass HSK 6 or above. And actually there's a lot more difference. In general, the way we native Chinese to learn Chinese is not just about learning how to use this language in everyday life, but also to learn the Chinese in the ancient form so we can understand our culture better. But as for foreigners, the main purpose of learning Chinese is to learn how to use it in everyday life to communicate. Yep, so that's the summary. And there's a lot of details to talk about, and that's why I'm making this video. So now let's get started. So first of all, I want to talk about my learning path. I was born and raised in mainland China, and I went to the public school. And there are different types of school in China. The first one is public school, the second one is private school, and the third one is international school. So in public school and private school, you have to take the Chinese courses. It's compulsory. You have to learn Chinese from primary school to high school, from grade 1 to grade 12, from 7 years old to 18 years old. And you will learn other subjects in Chinese. In international school, the Chinese course is optional. Then after high school, there will be university. If you choose Chinese as your major, then you will learn the Chinese ancient literature for 4 years. But if you don't choose Chinese as your major, then you will not take any Chinese lesson. But you will still learn other subjects in Chinese. So in this video, I'm gonna share my experience of learning Chinese since primary school to high school, which is from grade 1 to grade 12. And I would like to show you how do we learn Chinese through the textbook that we use in school in mainland China. So I found these textbooks. Just to clarify, these are not the book that I used when I was in primary school, because me in the primary school, that was like more than a decade ago. So all the books that I used, they are already gone and lost. So these are the books that we are using nowadays in the primary school and middle school in China right now. And they are published by 人民教育出版社, People's Education Press, which is the most widely used version. The book I got here could be a bit different from the book that I used many years ago. And of course, they will be more difficult, but the whole structure and concept are pretty much the same as before. Without further ado, let's check the book. And now let's get to grade 1. And in grade 1, most of the kids would be around 7 years old. And let's see what are the 7 years old kids would learn in China. Let's take a look at the catalog. So first of all, you will see some Hanzi for sure. This is the pre-unit of the book. I'll show you the page later. It's basically like teaching the kids saying we are Chinese, we are primary school students, etc. And this is the first unit. You see these are all basic Hanzi. So we will start it to learn pinyin from the second unit. So second unit, the third unit, fourth unit, we learned pinyin for 3 units. And then there will be some reading. So now let's take a look at the first page. That would be like this. You'll see, this is a very short sentence. 我是中国人. I'm Chinese. And the second page, it says 我是中国人. I'm Chinese. 我们都是中国人. We're all Chinese. And 中华民族是一家. The Chinese ethnic group are a big family. Just to let you know, there are 56 ethnic groups, so 1 majority, which is Han, and 55 minority. So there are 56 ethnic groups in China. And moving on, let's see, this is the first unit. There will be some basic Hanzi like 天地人, sky, ground, people. And then 你, 我, 他, you, I, he. And some other very basic Hanzi like 1、2、3、4、5, 金木水火土, 天地分上下, 日月照金鼓. It's just like a mini tiny catchy poem to help the kids to memorize some basic Hanzi. And as for the meaning, I bet you might be curious. Then that would be 1、2、3、4、5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 金木水火土, gold, tree, water, fire, dirt. So that's the 5 elements in the Taoism system and the 5 most important elements in the nature. And 天地分上下, so there's sky on top and ground at the bottom. 日月照金鼓, 日月 is the moon and the sun. 照 is shined on. 金 today, 鼓 old times. So basically it means the sun and the moon shined on the ancient time and the modern times. So the main purpose of this poem is to teach kids the basic Hanzi, and also it teach some Chinese traditional culture. Okay, moving on. So there are still a lot more basic Hanzi like 口 is mouth, 耳 ear, 目 eyes, 手 hands, 足 foot, and 日 sun, 月 moon, 山 mountain, 川 river, 水 water, 火 fire, 田 field, 禾 grain. Yep. And we have some writing practice. We use 田字格 to write. If you watch my Hanzi tutorial video, you know that we use 田字格 all the time, right? So 田字格 is pretty important for Hanzi learning beginner. It would tell you which parts go to what size. And move on to the unit 2, we're going to learn some pinyin. Yeah, we learned the a, o, e, wu, yu, and of course we learned about the tones. And we also learned to write pinyin in a sheet like this. It's like you have to write the pinyin in a very proper way, just like you have to write Hanzi in a very proper way. After we learn a few Hanzi and Pinyin, and then we will learn the Hanzi and Pinyin all together. So you will learn it from a short text like this one. This is 说话, speak, 说话. Actually, there's a few texts, but I chose this one because I think it might be interesting for you, because this little text showed you how do we make the sounds in Chinese. I'll read it. In this little short text, it says 小溪流说话. So the little river speak. And how do the little river speak? It speak 哗哗. So 哗哗 is the sound of river in Chinese. And 小雨点说话, the raindrop speak, and that would make 沙沙 sound. And 小鸽子说话, the little dove speak, it speak as 咕咕. And 小鸭子说话, so that's little duck speak, the duckling speak, ga ga. Yeah, we say the duck make the ga ga sound in Chinese. And 小花猫说话, meow meow. Yeah, it's pretty much the same as in English, meow. And 小青蛙说话, that's little frog speak, that would be 呱呱. And another little short text I would like to share it with you is the tongue twister, 绕口令. I believe many of you might heard of this tongue twister because it's super famous. It's like the king of the tongue twister in Chinese. That is 四是四, 十是十, 十四是十四, 四十是四十, 四十不是十四, 十四不是四十. Moving on, even though we're in grade 1, but we're gonna read a little bit of short text. Like this text is 秋天, autumn. So you see it's quite short and the Hanzi is pretty basic. So after reading the text, then we will learn the Hanzi in it and we will practice to write it. Like our teacher will assign us a lot of writing practice. Let's say one Hanzi and write it 50 times. Yeah, it's kind of a nightmare for me when I was little, but it does help the Hanzi crack into my brain. And moving on, we would also learn some little poem. So like this one is Jiangnan, River South. So it's a poem written 1,000 years ago because it's a simple one, so it's easy for the kids to learn. And this little text, it's focused on the parts of the Hanzi. For example, we say 日月明, so we have the 日 parts, the sun, plus the 月 parts, the moon, and altogether it make 明. So it's kind of like you read it and you memorize the Hanzi when you're reading it. And for example, like this one, 田丽, 田丽南. So you got the 田 on top, you got li at the bottom, and altogether you make nan. So when you're reading it, you're also trying to memorize the Hanzi. At the last few pages of the book, there will be a chart. So this is a Hanzi chart. There's a lot of Hanzi on the chart, and you will need to be able to recognize all the Hanzi on this chart. So basically, it's saying that if you're going to take a test in grade 1, these are all the Hanzi you should be able to read. Another chart in this book is the stroke chart. See, it showed you all the stroke, and every stroke have their name on it, and here is the example. And this chart is the radicals chart. So it showed you quite a lot of radical you will see in this book. And this chart is the Hanzi writing chart. So on this chart, there's less Hanzi, and you have to be able to recognize and to write all these Hanzi. So different from the chart on the last page, which is this page. So on this page, you should be able to recognize them. And as for this page, the blue chart, then you have to be able to recognize and write. Okay, moving on to grade 2. So let's see the catalog. And obviously there's no pinyin learning anymore because you will only learn about pinyin in grade 1. As for grade 2, you should be able to use all the pinyin. And let's see what are we gonna learn in grade 2. This is an interesting text that I would like to share. This is 姓氏歌, which is the surname song. Yeah, so a song with the Chinese surname. It says, 你姓什么? What's your surname? 我姓李. My surname is Li. Then 什么李? Which Li? Because, you know, if you say Li, then there's many different characters in Chinese with the pinyin Li, right? So 什么李 is asking like which Li? Can you tell me that character? Then it says 木子李. So yeah, this is how we Chinese people explained which Hanzi we're talking about. Like we say 木子李, so it's the Li that with a mu on top and the zi at the bottom. 木子李. And he said, 他姓什么? 他姓张. What's his surname? His surname is 张. 什么张? Which 张? Then 弓长张. So we have the gong and we have the chang, and together they are the zhang. Yep, so this teaches us how to explain our surname to other people. And moving on, there is ancient poem. I know there's already some ancient poems in grade 1. In grade 1, you have to understand the poem and read the poem, but it's not necessary to memorize and recite the poem. But in grade 2, you should be able to read it, to memorize it, and to recite it. Yeah, like this piece, 静夜思 is one of the most famous poems ever in the Chinese history. 静夜思, like thinking at night. It's written by Li Bai in Tang Dynasty. It says, 床前明月光，疑是地上霜。举头望明月，低头思故乡。And we also learned about some other famous ancient literature. This is from 三字经, and these are the very first few sentences in the 三字经. And it says, 人之初，性本善，性相近，习相远。苟不教，性乃迁。教之道，贵以专。子不学，非所宜。幼不学，老何为？玉不琢，不成器。人不学，不知矣。After learning all these ancient poems, there will be some tests about the ancient poems. Let me show you. There will be some questions like fill in the blank. So you got 举头望明月, and then you have to fill in the blank and write the next sentence. That would be 低头思故乡. And like this one, 人之初, and then fill in the blank, fill in the blank again, and then 习相远. So they are from here and here. And in grade 2, we will need to learn some longer article like this one. This is 狐狸和乌鸦. So You can see it's much longer than the text we learned in grade 1. So in general, in grade 2, you will need to learn a longer text and some Chinese ancient poems, and there will be a lot of Hanzi writing practice. And in this year, we will need to learn to write Hanzi a bit faster, and of course, in proper way. So in grade 1, you might write it pretty slow, but in grade 2, you'll have to speed it up. And now we're heading to the 3rd grade. And in the 3rd grade, most of the kids will be around 9 years old. And in 9 years old, we will learn some article without pinyin. And yeah, of course, there will be some pinyin for the new words. But for most of the words, because we already learned it in grade 1 and 2, so there will be no pinyin at all. And just to let you know, since 3rd grade, we will start to learn English. So which means after 2 years of learning pinyin, we will need to learn the letter again, but pronounce it in a bit different way. Sometimes it could be confusing. And in grade 3, we will learn to read longer story that's written by foreign writers, like this one, 卖火柴的小女孩, The Little Match Girl by Hans Christian Andersen. Actually, this is not the only Andersen's story we learned. We also learned about his other story, like The Ugly Duckling, The Emperor's New Clothes, The Little Mermaid, The Princess and the Peas, etc. But we will learn the story in the Chinese version. And yeah, you learn to read and you learn to write. In grade 1 and 2, we will just need to make some sentences. But when it comes to 3rd grade, we should be able to write longer sentence and make story. A very important skill you need to learn in grade 3 is write faster and accurate, and write longer text. In grade 1 and 2, we use pencil, which means if you write the Hanzi wrong, you still can use an eraser to correct yourself. But since grade 3, we will learn to use a ball pen or a signature pen. Even there is correction tape for you to cover the wrong Hanzi. But still, if you use too much correction tapes, your handwriting will look pretty bad and messy. So learning to write faster and more accurate is very important. And in grade 3, of course, we will need to learn more poem. Now let's get to grade 4. In grade 4, we will learn more complicated article, for sure. What I mean more complicated, it's not necessarily have to be longer, but it could be more difficult to understand, like this one. So there will be a lot of metaphor, and it describes things with more advanced words and Chinese idiom. Of course, we learned Chinese idiom since grade 1, but as we grew older, we will learn more and more advanced Chinese idiom, and you would see Chinese idiom more and more often. So let's take this text for example. There's a lot of Chinese idiom, which is 成语 in this text. So I'm gonna highlight all the 成语 in this text, okay? So be ready. So they would be 天下奇观. Yeah, this could be one. And若隐若现. Yeah, this could be one. And 人山人海, this could be one. And 闷雷滚动, this could be one. 人声鼎沸, this could be one. And 风平浪静, 水天相接. 齐头并进, 浩浩荡荡, 山崩地裂. 漫天卷地，风豪浪吼。I think that's pretty much of it. And you see, this is not a very long text, but there's a lot of Chinese idiom in it. So for me, I think read it without pinyin is just fine because we don't really need pinyin that much. But learning all these Chinese idiom could be overwhelming. So you need to memorize the character, the meaning of it, and how to use it. And you have to use the idiom in your writing as well. We also learn about many other historical stories, like this one. This is a Chinese legend, 盘古开天地. The story about 盘古 is basically saying that 盘古 is the man that creates the world. So before 盘古, the world is very messy. So 盘古used a hatchet to chop the world into two pieces. So one to be the sky and the other one to be the ground. And so anyway, 盘古 is the creator of this world. And another legend is 女娲补天. And 女娲 is the goddess that make human being. So she make human being with dirt. But after she made human being, there's a huge disaster happened to human being, and the sky cracked. And 女娲tried to save human being, and she fixed that crack on the sky. So these are some Chinese legend. And actually, we learned a lot more than that. We not only learned the Chinese legend, we also learned about some foreign legend, like this one, 普罗米修斯. This is the story of Prometheus stole the fire from the god and bring the fire to human being. Actually, we also learned about some other Greek legends. At least we know a few names of them, like 宙斯 is Zeus, and 雅典娜 is Athena, etc. And of course, Chinese poem every year. But I have to point out that the ancient poem in grade 4 would have deeper meaning than before. So in grade 1, 2, 3, most of the poem is just about describing the view, like saying, this is a beautiful mountain, there's cloud on it, bird on it, big bird singing, flower blossom, like something like that. But in grade 4, there will be deeper meaning. It will talk about life philosophy. Yeah, I'll read one for you. For example, like this one. 题西林壁, this is the name of the poem, and it's written by Su Shi in Song Dynasty. And he said, 横看成岭侧成峰，远近高低各不同。不识庐山真面目，只缘身在此山中。So 横看成岭侧成峰, basically it's saying I'm in a lot of mountain, so if you see the mountain in different directions, they have different shape. And 远近高低各不同, which means the mountain looks so different when you are in the different position of a mountain. And 不识庐山真面目. Lushan is a name of a mountain in China. It's very famous. The name is Lushan. And he said, 不识庐山真面目. I don't know the real lookings of Lushan. 只缘身在此山中. That's just because I'm in this mountain. Basically, it's saying that I don't know the whole picture of one thing. That's because I'm in the middle of it. This is a metaphor. And this metaphor can apply to many things in your life. So let me give you one example. Let's say you're facing a big problem, you're in a dilemma. That's because you are in the box of that problem and you didn't think outside of that box to see the whole picture of your problem. I hope that's a good example. Okay, so now let's moving on to the grade 5. And in grade 5, most of the kids would be around 11 years old. All right. And in 5th grade, we will learn some article written by some famous writers, like this one, 桂花鱼. I want to show you this page because I really like the design of it. Can you see? It's beautiful trees and flowers. I really like it. And also, we will learn about some articles that talk about history, like this one, 将相和. The story mainly tells the reconciliation between two important figures of the state of Zhao during the Warring States period, and that is more than 2,200 years ago. To be honest, it's quite complicated for 11 years old kids to under the historical story and the life philosophy of that story. But I think it's still quite helpful for us to know about our history. And we will learn it again in the history class in the middle school. For me, basically, I think the historical story we learn in primary school is like the mini introduction of the history class in the middle school. And we also learn about some half real, half legend kind of story, like this one, the love story of 牛郎织女. This is also the origin of the Chinese traditional Valentine's Day, which falls on the 7th day of the 7th month in the Chinese lunar calendar. Okay, so when is it? So in 2024, it was on 10th of the August. In 2025, it will be 29th of the August. And of course, poem as usual. In grade 5, the topic of poem would be even more serious. Remember, in grade 1, 2, and 3, the topic of the poem is very straightforward and easy. Mostly it's about nature and beautiful things. Since grade 4, you will learn some life philosophy. And in the 5th grade, it will be more serious. Like this poem, I will read it for you. 示儿. So 示儿, actually it's a letter for the poet's son. And the poet is Lu You in Song Dynasty. So he said, 死去元知万事空. I knew that everything would have nothing to do with me after my death. See? Very serious. 但悲不见九州同. But I'm still very sad that I didn't witness the reunion of my country. 王师北定中原日. On the day when the royal troop reclaimed the lost territories, 家祭无忘告乃翁. Don't forget to inform your father during the family sacrifice. So it's a letter for the poet's son. So the poet knew that he's going to die, and he's very sad because his country was broken. And he wrote this letter to his son to tell his son that don't forget to inform me when there's good news about my country. Okay, moving on. Now let's get to the grade 6. Now we are 12 years old. The 6th grade will be the last year in primary school in most of the area in China. And yeah, there's some exception. In some area, there will be the first year in the middle school. But in my area, which is Guangdong province, the 6th grade is the last year in primary school. So yeah, grade 6 for me is still in primary school. In grade 6, we will talk about some topic that's important for the society and for the whole world. Like this one, 只有一个地球, only one earth. And we will also learn about more famous people in the world. Like this one, this is the story of Beethoven creating the famous song, Moonlight Sonata. As we mentioned just a few minutes ago in this video, in the lower grade, we will also learn some famous literature pieces and famous people from other countries. But in lower grade, we will learn more fairy tales. And in higher grades, we will learn more real story about that famous person or the famous pieces that person wrote. And of course, we will need to learn Chinese ancient poems as usual. And more than that, in grade 6, there will be some ancient article. I mean, the ancient article written 1,000 years ago, like this one. This is a story of 伯牙古琴, the man who's playing the piano. He is 伯牙, and the man who's listening to the music is 钟子期. They are very, very good friends. 钟子期 can understand 伯牙's music very well, way better than any other people. But 钟子期 died of sickness. 伯牙 heard the news and felt so heartbroken and broke his piano and never played that piano again. So this is a story of friendship. It's hard to find a person who can understand you so well, and beautiful things can be gone all in a sudden. The most important skill that you need to learn in grade 6 is to write different type of essay, like narrative essays or proposal, etc. You should need to write 400 to 600 Hanzi in one essay. Actually, it's quite difficult when you're doing a test. By the way, if you are interested in what the Chinese test look like in China, I mean, after all learning all this, what's in our test? So if you're interested in that, let me know in the comment section. I will think about making a video about it, about the Chinese test in China. And finally, we finished the primary school and get into the middle school. In the middle school, we will be focusing on the following aspects. So the first one is to read long article. We will read some chapter from a famous book written by a famous writer, like this one, 秋天的怀念. It's a very famous article written by Shi Tiesheng, a very famous Chinese writer. And we will learn about the famous pieces not only from Chinese writer but also foreign writer. Like this one, these are some pieces written by Tai Ge. And we also learn more story about the famous people in the world. Like this one, this article is about Madame Curie, the scientist who discovered radium and was the first female Nobel Prize winner. And this one is a chapter from the biography of Russell. In this chapter, he talked about what were the things he was living for. But this is a really deep topic. Do we really understand the topic? Because we were just a teenager when we were learning this article. For me, not really. At that time, I was just a teenager. How can I understand a very deep life philosophy like this? And for me, I think it's a bit far away from my life. But it did benefit me. What really benefited me was that I knew there was a thinker or scientist or celebrity in the world, and I knew that they could be the one that give me some insight of life, when I grew older, when I got confused by my life, I knew there was some wise people in the world and I can learn from them. To be honest, sometimes I'm glad that I didn't grow up with much high technology stuff. I didn't grow up with a smartphone in my hand every day. If I did, then as a teenager, I don't think I would have that patience to learn all about these literatures and wisdoms. I would be scrolling my phone all day and waste all my time into something that gives me instant pleasure but not beneficial to me in the long term. Moving on, the second thing we're focusing on is the Chinese ancient literature. I know, we had a lot of ancient literature going on in primary school, but trust me, in the middle school there's a lot more, because we know that China has thousands of years of history and we still can read what people wrote 1,000 years ago because of Hanzi. Yep, Hanzi is the connection between ancient China and modern China. However, the words and grammar in ancient time and modern times are quite different. So that's why we need to spend so much time to study the ancient Chinese. Actually, learning these poems could be quite overwhelming because there's a lot of things to remember, but I have to say that there's a few pieces that I really like, and I would like to show you one piece of them. That is 天净沙秋思. It's written by Ma Zhiyuan. And on this little poet, it says, 枯藤老树昏鸦，小桥流水人家，古道西风瘦马，夕阳西下，断肠人在天涯. So it's a very, very short poem, and it didn't talk much about his feeling. He just described the views, the environment, but just by describing the environment that he saw, you can feel that he's so sad. He's completely heartbroken. I really like that. And you know, sometimes when you're so sad, you don't know how to describe your sadness, and you don't know how to describe your feeling. It feels like you're disconnected with this world. And in this poem, it didn't talk much about the author's feeling, but he just talked about what he saw. By describing what he saw, you feel the strong connection with him, because if you put yourself into that situation, so if you're a happy person, what you saw, they could be super happy. You see happy birds singing, happy kids playing, jumping. But when you're very sad, you just see old trees, old houses, or skinny horse. So I think I really like the way he described things and the way he expressed his feeling. And we learned some Chinese idiom from the Chinese ancient literature, like this one. This is a Chinese idiom, 愚公移山, and we learn it from the Chinese ancient literature like this. So basically, this is a story of Yu Gong moving the mountain. The whole idea of the story is that with the persistence and determination, all difficulties, even big ones, can be solved. But this is kind of like a legend or made-up story. And the following one is a real story, happened in the history. This is a few paragraphs from the Chinese historical book, 史记. In these several paragraphs, it talks about a story between the general Zhou Yafu and the emperor Han Wendi. I'm not going to talk about the details of this story because it's kind of long. I think this video is long enough. And if you're interested in reading ancient literature like this, just let me know. I'll think about making some video of reading ancient literature like this. To learn about the story like this also helped me with my history class. Remember, we're in the middle school now. So in middle school, we will need to learn Chinese, mathematics, English, history, geography, politics, chemistry, physics, and biology. 9 subjects in total. So in Chinese class, we will learn about the history in ancient literature. And in the history class, we will learn the history in modern Chinese, which means there will be some overlaps in Chinese classes and history classes. To learn Chinese ancient literature could be quite helpful in your everyday life, to be honest. It could help us to understand our history and culture from the first-hand record. And also, it would be helpful when you're in the museum, like this. In this article, it described a walnut being carved into a boat. There were cabins, windows, stove, and there were famous poets on the boat holding scrolls in their hands and chatting happily. Yeah, we learned a lot of Chinese ancient literature in the middle school, and here is a piece of ancient literature I really would like to share it with you because this is my favorite, and I guess many of you might heard about it. And that is the story of Mulan. Yeah, I think the girl Mulan is quite famous all over the world. There's a Disney movie about her, but I didn't learn about her from the Disney movie. I learned about Mulan from this article, a piece of ancient article written in Northern Dynasty, which is around 1,500 years ago. From what I've learned from this ancient literature about Mulan, Mulan was a female warrior that fight for her family and her country. And she didn't have a boyfriend. Anyway, if you're interested in what Mulan's like in the history and the historical record about her, then let me know. Drop your thoughts in the comment section, and I'm thinking about making a video about reading this article about Mulan. Moving on. Another very important skill that we need to learn in middle school is that we will learn to write essays discussing about some serious topic in the modern days. Topics like growing up, friendship, family relationship, tradition, cultural heritage, global warming, technology, news, etc. In the middle school, we will need to write an essay with at least 800 Hanzi in 1 hour. So that could be hard. I know some people can even write the essay in ancient Chinese instead of modern Chinese. That's crazy. Anyway, we're heading to the end of this video. That's what we would learn from grade 1 to grade 9. After grade 9, some people would choose to attend vocational school to learn some skills like fixing cars, making clothes, etc. And some people will attend high school, and that would be grade 10 to grade 12. What we learned in grade 10 to 12 is pretty much the same from grade 7 to 9, but just a lot harder. So, because we already talked about what we learned from grade 7 to 9, just imagine the article is a lot longer, including the article in modern Chinese and the article in ancient Chinese. Just imagine it's like 2 times longer, and the words are more complicated. So anyway, I'm not gonna talk about the grade 10 to 12 in details because this is like the 2 times harder version of grade 9 to 11. Well, that's pretty much about it for today's video. This is the video I've been wanting to do for months, years, a pretty long time, but I didn't make it because it's just too much to share, and the video would be super long and could be boring for some people. But I'm glad I made it. I think I showed you a big picture of what we will learn in the school, in the public school. And I know I talk a lot about the Chinese ancient literature in this video. And just to let you know, I'm not here to brag about how smart I am, like how good we are in ancient literature or history, because there's nothing to brag about. That's just what we learned in school. I know not every Chinese like to talk about Chinese idiom, history, poems, stuff like that. But what I mean is some of us, some native Chinese, we like to talk about Chinese ancient literature and history and stuff. That's because we learn it from school and we like it, so we talk about it. Well, that's all for today's video. If you made it here, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your support, because I know I've been talking too much. And maybe some article and ancient literature would be too long or difficult or boring for a lot of people. But I know you made it here, and thank you so much. If you have any questions or advice or thoughts, just drop it in my comment section. And I'm Mandy. I'll see you in the next video.